In just 24 hours, we will be reporting live from St. Louis for the first round of Arch Madness 2025 here on Media Row with Justin Miller, sponsored and served by Kelly's Little Nipper. Thank you guys so much for joining us here on a Wednesday. I'm your host, Justin Miller. Busy show, really busy show today. It's going to be a long week, a fun week, one where, I remember as a kid, when you get up into class and they talk about, hey, what kind of job do you want? You'd have kids go up there and they would say, I want to be a doctor or a lawyer or whatever. And I remember just being like, I want to complain about having to talk about sports. Like me saying, oh, it's going to be a long week because I'm just watching basketball all week is a dream come true right then and there. So going to be down in St. Louis, leaving really early tomorrow morning because, one, we don't know how the weather's going to look and all that stuff, but also, two, just got to try to get down there. That first game tips off at noon and tips off a really fun and exciting first round with a lot of matchups that are kind of up in the air that we will get to today, but a lot to get to. We'll break down the entire first round. I was debating on doing the entire tournament and giving you guys kind of my thoughts on, what I think will happen at the end of the year, or at the end of the tournament. But to be honest, I think it would be more fun to just take it round by round, because while we usually do this podcast Monday and Wednesday and Friday, we're adding an extra show this week with being live in St. Louis. So you have today's show, and then we'll have a Friday show live from St. Louis. You won't see my sick background that Megan helped me decorate, but it'll be a hotel room. I'll be live in St. Louis, and then Saturday night I'll record one for Sunday to really preview the championship as well, since we're staying for the full weekend. If Drake gets bounced in the on Friday, we're staying. Because on this podcast, it is Drake focused, but I don't want it to just be Drake. You and I has an opportunity to go deep, and that would be fun to cover. Bradley's been playing so good of late. There's teams like Belmont where they're kind of up in the air, but man, when they're hot, they're a tough team to beat. So a lot to get to. We'll break down Arch Madness first round, and then we'll get to the Drake women's basketball game tipping off tomorrow at 6 as they hit the road to play Valpo, second to last game before the end of the year for Pullman and her group. And before we jump into everything, kind of not a semi-deep tease because it will be released today, but be on the lookout on social media because thanks to the help from people at Drake and Carson Culp especially directing this, we may have made a commercial for Media Row, and I think you're going to like it. It was very fun to write and do, and huge shout out to Carson. That dude is busy. He's traveling, covering the Drake women. He was helping produce some really cool content with the Drake women and was able to find a time where it was able to work. And there's some other big names coming into this commercial. Like I'm leaving out a star that would really grab you guys, but also that's kind of the surprise is the big name star hopping on and joining Media Row here for a little promo video getting set for St. Louis. So be on the lookout for that. It'll probably be released somewhere near or after the release of this episode. So be on the lookout. I'll make sure to push it as much as possible as well. But let's jump into today's show, sponsored by Kelly's Little Nipper. Let's just start breaking down this first round. So let's go with just from start to finish. First round, the 8th seed Southern Illinois Salukis taking on 9th seed Indiana State Sycamores. Noon on Thursday, winner will play the Drake Bulldogs. SIU finished 13-18 on the season, 8-12 in the Valley. Indiana State 14-17, 8-12 in the Valley. These two just played. In the final regular season game, the Sycamores pounced on SIU, winning 95-77 at home. He had Samaj Teal putting up 22 points, Gray and Wagner putting up 18 points as well. Indiana State going lethal from behind the arc, 12 3-pointers. That's the third most they've made this season. They have had a couple of 13 3-pointers made in a few games and a couple of 15, which is their season high. But Indiana State, a team that if they can start shooting like that, if they get hot at the right time, they have some decent players. Now, I don't think they'll go far in the tournament, but definitely a good way to end the regular season to get into St. Louis. But my big thing with this game, because I think it's going to be close, I don't think it's going to be a 95-77 blowout. And you look at the rosters, and while SIU has some good players, Ali Deba, Kennard Davis Jr., they have some really good, talented players. I think 4 of their 5 starters average 10-plus points. But none of them, in my opinion, and from what I've watched this season in the Valley, there's not someone on that team that can really just take over a game by themselves and almost single-handedly win a game by themselves for their team. Not in the same sense as Samaj Teal for Indiana State. He is one of the best players in the game right now in the Valley, and I think he has proved time and time again that, yes, he needs help, but man, against Drake, when the last time Drake and Indiana State played and went into overtime, he was basically the main guy. He was the one making all the shots, putting up 20-plus points. He was unstoppable and nearly single-handedly beat the Drake Bulldogs. So I'm taking Indiana State in this game because I just like how Samaj Teal can control and dominate a game by himself, even when his bench isn't putting up the most points. But of late, the bench has gotten better. Wagner has been really impressive in the second half of the year. Gray has had his ups and downs as well. But I like Indiana State taking down SIU in that first game. So Indiana State, Drake, part 3 on Thursday, which will be really exciting because, like I said, the last time these two played, overtime thriller in Des Moines. So moving forward, we have the 5-12 matchup, Illinois State and Missouri State. Illinois State Redbirds, a team I've been really high on in these last few podcasts. Illinois State, they finished the year 18-13, 10-10 in the Valley, won 3 of their last 4. The winner will play Belmont following the Indiana State SIU game. Missouri State, just not a great farewell tour, leaving the Valley now. 9-22 overall, 2-18 in the conference. Lost their final 5 games, but that last one against the Drake Bulldogs, they kept up, got the game into overtime, hit 10 3-pointers. You had White go off and couldn't seem to miss from behind the arc. But in the season, it's been all Illinois State, and it's been Illinois State for quite a while too. Redbirds lead the season series 2-0. They've won the last 5 in a row. I'm really excited to watch this matchup, though, because of the big men. Chase Walker, named one of the Valley's most improved. He deserves it because if you look at him a year ago, definitely shed a lot of weight, and you can tell it in his game. He's faster now, moving side to side. He's improved his mid-range jumper. He continues to build on being one of the more consistent free throw shooters in all the Valley, let alone a big man being consistent at the free throw line. So I'm really excited to watch the battle in the paint between Bonosu and Walker, because that is going to be the telling point in this game. And this one's difficult too, because neither team has great depth. There's only 2 players averaging double figures for Illinois State, and that's Kingsinger and Walker right now for the Redbirds. But I just love Illinois State's physicality. I mean, Kingsinger with the bloody, nose and eyebrow going up against Bradley just solidified kind of what this team has been about throughout the season. And you have Walker. You have a great point guard leading the Redbirds. I think Missouri State's going to fall into the same trap they have all year long, and that is the starting five performs and keeps the game competitive, but overall, bench doesn't show up. And I think Illinois State has better athletes on their bench to help Walker and Kingsinger, and that's what leads the Redbirds to victory on Thursday. And Illinois State, I'm really hyped about this team. I think that game and the possibility of them playing a Belmont team that has had inconsistencies throughout the season, I wouldn't be surprised if I have Illinois State, depending how they play on Thursday, I wouldn't be surprised if I have them moving into that semifinals round on Saturday. So give me Illinois State taking down Missouri State. See you later, Bears. It was great having you in the Valley, but all right, adios. So the Bears leaving the Valley, not a great farewell tour. They'd finished the year 2-19 in the Missouri Valley Conference and 9-23 overall if they lose on Thursday. And now the third game in the first round, you have Murray State taking on Evansville. Winner plays Bradley on Friday. Murray State 15-16 overall, 9-11 in the conference, 2-2 in their final four games. Evansville, a team that, man, I think a lot of people had them towards the bottom, and they were able to kind of combat and really improve. 11-20, 8-12 in the conference, lost their final three. But in those last three, it wasn't like they were getting blown out like SIU did to Indiana State. They didn't lose by more than 5. And that's kind of telling of this team, of where they're at right now and where they could be in the future. Against Drake, looked really good at home. They were causing major issues for the team right now that's in first place, won the regular season outright. They were right there with the Bulldogs. And I think this one is going to be one of the better games on Thursday. I think this could be a really tight matchup just because of the similarities. While Murray State, is 5-1 in the last 6 against Evansville, the team split this season. The big question mark is just, can Evansville score? They're 12th in scoring offense, last in scoring margin, and both offenses have been inconsistent this season, but both are top 5 in defense, so you're going to have a defensive battle. Here's where the similarities start coming into play. You have 2 head coaches that have identical records. Steve Prohm in his third year with Murray State, he's 1-2 in Arch Madness. Davis Ragland in his third year with Evansville is also 1-2 in St. Louis. And while Evansville has a bigger size advantage over Murray State, I'm going to take the Racers because I like the backcourt. I think that starting 5 has been one of the more fun starting 5s to watch. It's kind of up in the air of which starting 5 are you going to get. Are you going to get the Murray State that can shoot over 50% from the field that we saw during that huge stretch when they kind of plowed through Drake and UNI? Or are you going to get the Murray State that just couldn't do anything against the Bulldogs in the second time playing at home? And just what does Steve Prohm have cooking here against the Aces? But I really like Murray State to win this one. So the 7th seed, Murray State Racers, I have them advancing to take on Bradley on Friday. And then finishing up that Thursday night should be a really exciting matchup to finish out the night. Winner to play UNI, number 6 UIC Flames taking on number 11 Valpo. 17-13 Flames, 10-10 in Valley play. Beat Valpo on Sunday only by 4. Valpo 13-8, 6-14, lost their final 2 games. UIC 5-1 in the last 6 against Valpo. Won both games here in the season. And you couldn't have 2 more different teams. UIC, top 5 in offense versus the worst shooting team in the Valley, Valpo, shooting only 43% from the field. And I think UIC is a team very similar to Belmont, where defense isn't their strong suit, but they like to put up a bunch of shots. So the key and what will be vital in the decision of who wins this game is who gets second chance opportunities, who controls the glass on Thursday night between UIC and Valpo. And UIC has tremendous size. Now, Valpo has good size too, but UIC is able to spread the court better with their big men. And all year long, the Flames have dominated the offensive glass. All year, they've led the Valley with an average of 10 offensive rebounds a game. And it's just going to come down to, can the stars on Valpo, the starters, get help? I mean, that's a lot of teams' concerns, but this one, it's just been tough to watch because Valpo, again, just played UIC and only lost by 4, but it was because their bench just couldn't do anything. So you have the reigning freshman of the year in Cooper Schweiger, and against Valpo, both games this year, he's averaged 23 points. He scored 33 against UIC on Sunday. But in most of the starters, I think All Right, which is by far the best name in the Missouri Valley, starting guard for Valpo named All Right, is tremendous. Tremendous name. I remember Alyssa Hurdle and I talking about how there needs to be an All Valley team name, and he would win it every year. He's been I love that name. But All Right, he was averaging around 14 points per game, and the rest of the starters kind of in that same realm too. But then here's the big thing. You look at what the bench has done, and you look at Valpo's, and they're only averaging in those 2 games against UIC, and in those 2 losses against UIC, they're only averaging 9 points. A bench averaging 9 points. And then you go, okay, but what is UIC doing? Because they're very starter heavy too. But UIC actually getting help, and more than just a little help from their bench. UIC bench is averaging 31 points per game against Valpo this season. So I think it's going to come down to who can get second chance opportunities, who's going to control the offensive glass, and then finally, which bench performs. And right now on paper and what history has shown us, it's UIC. So give me UIC taking down Valpo and going on to play UNI on Friday. But I know kind of Valpo was the favorite upset pick from what a lot of people were showing on Twitter. And I know beating a team 3 straight times in one season is really difficult. But man, I can't pull myself to pick Valpo in this one. Because I just think on paper, I think from what we've seen in not only the games they've gone head to head and just what we've seen throughout the season. I mean, Valpo, great at home, but not great on the road. Can they be great in St. Louis? I don't know, but my gut's telling me go with UIC and go with the team that can put up some points from their role players and go with the team that controls the glass. But huge reason Drake has been so successful this year because they're one of the best in the Valley in opponents' rebounds and controlling the glass. And that's why Drake's been so talented. And the reason Drake lost to UIC was because they couldn't take advantage of the second chance opportunities in early January. So give me UIC. So I have UIC taking down Valpo to play UNI. Then I'll have Murray State upset or taking down Evansville, not an upset, but taking down Evansville to play Bradley. Illinois State sending Missouri State packing away from the Missouri Valley for good as they win against the Bears in the 5-12 matchup, and then Indiana State overtaking SIU in the early game to then go play Drake on Friday. So with those, and please comment. Let me know what you think of my predictions and kind of my thought process. Please let me know. It's been awesome with this podcast of seeing everyone in the Missouri Valley like media and just the fan base that all these teams have. Because what I've really tried to do with this podcast is, it's Drake centralized, but I want to talk about other teams, and I try to watch as many Valley games as possible so I can get a good feeling of these teams and feel like I know what I'm talking about slightly, when it gets to this point in the season. So I would love to know what Valpo fans are thinking, Missouri State fans, and so forth. So please comment in YouTube. I think you can comment in Spotify as well. Buzzsprout, I get comments from fans as well, so really appreciate that, and keep them coming. I love hearing it. I've always been a guy that criticism and kind of debates like this, I've never shied away from. I love it, and it's part of why we get into sports media. So keep them coming. But I only have one upset in that first round, and that kind of concerns me. And sometimes that can mess with your head. When we get to March Madness, you're going to hear me have this discussion a lot, because this has been the most balanced, just nationwide college basketball season I think we've ever seen. But you try to fill out these brackets, and if it's all chalk, right away you think something's wrong. Or if you don't feel like you have enough upsets, you feel like something's wrong, just because we know we're in March. We know what this month means and all the craziness that is potentially going to happen. So I went back just the last 3 Arch Madness tournaments, and just to see how often we see upsets in the first round. And I only have one this year. There was only one in 2022. And then in 2023, there was not a single upset in the Missouri Valley Conference tournament. It was all chalk. And then last year, there was 2 upsets in the first round. So on average, there's the most they've had is 2 in the last 3 years. And this year, I could see it being chalk. I'm taking Indiana State because of Samaj Teal and the athleticism some of those starters have on Indiana State. But would it shock me if SIU wins? No. That is going to be a fantastic game. I don't think it's a blowout like we saw in Indiana State earlier. But other than that, I feel really confident about all my other picks. Even UIC, who just played Valpo, and Valpo's only lost by 4, and they're going to have film. They just played. But even that one, I feel really confident about UIC winning that game. So I think this year, only one upset with Indiana State in the first round. That's my prediction for the first round of Arch Madness. But like I said, Friday, we will do basically the same thing. We'll recap the first round and then preview the second round of Arch Madness. And then I'll get down to the stadium to make sure to get video and live updates from all the games. I'm staying, which I'm really excited for, because 2 years ago when I went as a student broadcaster, I could only go in for the Drake game. I couldn't go into any other game. I got into other games because the arena's huge. Not every seat's filled. So I snuck in to watch like UNI Bradley, Indiana State, Bradley in the second day as well. Try to sneak into those games as much as possible. But this year, I actually have a pass for every game, because they ask you when you fill it out, like, hey, are you going to stay even if your team loses? Are you wanting to follow every team? So I clicked yes, 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 and yes. So really excited to actually be there for every game, and really excited to hopefully bring you along with me. So make sure, like I keep saying, follow along on social media for all of our updates as usual. So there's your first round prediction of the Missouri Valley Conference tournament, the first tournament ahead of March Madness. So before we get into a little bit of the Drake women's game, before we finish up our show today, give a shout out to our title sponsor in Kelly's Little Nipper. Kelly's Little Nipper, again, a place that I feel so comfortable at, and I really wanted this one. I really wanted this sponsor, and Jeff coming along and being a part of the Media Row family, it just feels right because there's so much you can do there. It's not just a place to just get drinks. It's a place to have conversation and have fun. Listen to good music. They have live music there at Kelly's Little Nipper. They have great food. It's not just drinks that they have, while they do have wonderful, fantastic mixed drinks as well. So just make sure to go check out Kelly's Little Nipper at 1701 East Grand Avenue, Des Moines. So make sure to check them out. And if you do go to Kelly's Little Nipper, if you're watching the Arch Madness tournament or anything, just make sure to say you stopped in because of Media Row. So huge thank you to Kelly's Little Nipper. Wouldn't be able to do much of this without their sponsorship, so really appreciate that. Moving on, though, to the Drake women's game that will take place tomorrow at 6 o'clock. I will try my best to keep track of it, but again, we'll be in the middle of the first round of Arch Madness, so we'll try to do my best to keep an eye on that game. But Drake, this women's team continues to win, and right now, 2 games earlier, when they lose to Missouri State at home in a heartbreaker in overtime, you're sitting there going, man, you're going to need Missouri State to really go on a losing streak for you to have a chance to get in first place again. And Missouri State's lost 2 in a row. And Drake continues to win and continues to look really good because they're just back to their normal selves. Now, the biggest thing is just to limit turnovers because as we saw on Saturday against UNI, they had a great big lead for 3 of the 4 quarters and then got absolutely handled in that fourth quarter where I think UNI put up around 29 points in just 1 quarter. Drake able to win by 1, but it was mostly because of the turnovers, a little sloppy from the backcourt, trying to sneak passes in the paint off of pick and rolls. Just wasn't a pretty fourth quarter, but they had built such a big lead in those previous 3 quarters. They were all right, and that's just because they were playing their style. 8 straight games of 20-plus assists. I think they had 26 against UNI. Dinnebier continues to just be dominant. Becker is playing incredible. Anna Miller stretching the floor better and better each game. So I say, if I'm Drake, you've played Valpo already. You dominated Valpo 82-64. This is a team that's 8-10 in the Missouri Valley, lower tier team. You're going on the road, which will always be tough. But as long as you protect the ball, this is your game. You should easily, I don't want to say easily because there's no such thing as easy wins, but this one does feel like this shouldn't be as scary as the other ones have been so far in these last few weeks. But just continue to share the ball. There's so many star power and star players on this women's team. Katie Dinnebier's not the only one. Ava Hawthorne's great. You have Courtney Becker, who's great. I think Anna Miller has been one of the most improved players offensively this season, and she's been great. And not just offensively in her scoring and her post moves, I think passing too. That's why Drake's been able to put up 20-plus assists as often as they do, is she's become a huge part of that. So Drake women taking on Valpo tomorrow night at 6 o'clock. Drake already with a season lead 1-0 against the Valpo Beacons. So make sure to tune into that. Make sure to follow along as I head to St. Louis tomorrow morning, early tomorrow morning. And then, as always, make sure to like, subscribe, comment, all that good stuff. A huge thank you to DKG Images. A huge thank you to all of our listeners. Of course, big thank you to Kelly's Little Nipper for being the title sponsor of Media Row. And as always, thank you to the listener for making this possible. So excited to see a few of the fans in St. Louis. Make sure to stop by and say hi if you see me, or if I recognize you, I'll make sure to stop by and say hi as well. Enjoy your day and enjoy a fun weekend of Missouri Valley Conference basketball. Stay safe if you're driving down to St. Louis. I'll be sure to see you there. So next show, 2 o'clock on Friday. Lots to get to as we will be a day in to the Arch Madness tournament. So huge thank you to Kelly's Little Nipper. We'll see you Friday at 2 o'clock on Media Row with Justin Miller, served by Kelly's Little Nipper.